If you pay attention enough, a still image can tell a whole story.
Every day when we go out shooting, we're hoping that we're going to get what we call an iconic picture.
I believe that great stories take time.
I'm Harry Borden. I guess I'm a portrait photographer. For the first 20 years, I was primarily doing portraits of the great and good. In complete absence of thought. I was very lucky to work at a time when printed media was a viable business model, and so there was plenty of sort of money sloshing around in the system. I think if you're good at photographing people, it's inevitable, unless you sort of actively fight against that you'll be photographing celebrities. There were times when I sort of felt that what I was doing was quite frivolous, but by and large, you're meeting people who, in the narrative of their lives, are at a zenith, or at a high point, and that's actually very inspiring. You're kind of constantly meeting people that are part of the cultural zeitgeist. For instance, I remember photographing the Spice Girls in Bangkok. The idea was that we would photograph them on top of this roof. And I did all these pictures, which are kind of like obvious, them against the skyline of Bangkok. And we sort of went back down and we just had a little breather because it was so humid, and they just sat like that on the window. And I just said, hold it, and I just did one roll really quickly. And I think there's one frame where the two heads are touching together in the middle, and there's a nice sort of line going through it, and it was just a genuine moment. I remember at the time there were lots of pictures of the Spice Girls, and they did seem like kind of, like advertising photographs. They were sort of very, very commodified. Whereas that picture, it's just 5 girls who are kind of like, tired and a bit sweaty. They obviously have a good rapport together, and they have this connection, and I think it's revealed in that photograph. The thing that I took away from that is always be ready, always be open to the possibility that something will fall into your lap that's just absolutely brilliant and better than anything you'd anticipated getting. Being alive to those sorts of serendipitous gifts that you occasionally are given. Good. Look towards me. Good. All the children have been sort of my muse, really.
What's muse?
Sort of my obsession, my sort of the thing that's in front of me that I photograph to explore my sort of own issues. Just absence of thought. I said absence of thought because I think sometimes it's more interesting, otherwise people tend to kind of try too hard to pose, and the pictures are kind of more interesting when people kind of reveal something of them, and there's an element of ambiguity in the picture. Just hold that.
Does your dad take pictures of you a lot? How do you feel about it?
Sometimes it's annoying because...
You like it most of the time?
Most of the time it's alright, but I like it. But sometimes it's annoying because we need to get home or something because I'm thirsty or hungry or something. And he's just there like taking a picture, taking his time.
Actually, I'll tell you what would be interesting. Just go next to them. Okay, and then face me. Okay, that's good. I always like to deconstruct what's going on. Okay, that's nice. Always look in people's eyes, and if you can see a highlight there, just be aware of the highlight, because you can actually go and not have a highlight, and then you're saying something else, and the pictures, people can look a bit more like an object, or they can look a bit dead. But if you want a picture, a portrait that has a bit of life, you want to sort of highlight, which is in essence a reflection of the light source. So if you look at Florian, you can see there's a highlight in his eye. The light is being funneled in. So it's just being aware of where all the light's coming from and working with it. Jump. I just sort of trust my instincts and just sort of improvise. Often something that seems silly, at the very worst, there'll be moments of a moment of awkwardness and, to get through, and then people forget. But if you do say something and it turns out to be a brilliant idea, then you've got this wonderful picture that lives on, you know. Okay, sort of serious. My favourite portrait is this picture of Margaret Thatcher. It was for Time magazine, part of a portfolio of heroes and villains of the last sort of century. My memory of it was that we were photographing her in this tiny studio in Battersea. When she arrived, I did some documentary type pictures of her getting ready, having her makeup done, and she had beautiful skin, I remember. But that kind of helped me calm down so that I knew I had something in the bag. And then the formal photo shoot started. Whenever you do these portraits, when you get commissioned by magazines, you have to sort of ensure that you get another commission. You have to give the picture editor what they want, and then you go on your flight of fancy and you give them what they hadn't anticipated. I mean, when you've got somebody as colourful as Mrs. Thatcher was, it's just a question of filling the frame and remaining composed and ensuring that you get something kind of simple and strong. And that's what I did, you know, a very conventional portrait. And then after that, one of the last frames of the session, I asked her to close her eyes. Quite often, if you tell someone to close their eyes and then get them to raise their eyebrows, it sort of has a sort of power to it because they're in repose and you're observing them and they're not actually observing you. It's almost voyeuristic. So I took that picture and I think it was my favourite picture from the set. And then after that, I had my picture taken with her. I sort of put my arm around her and in my peripheral vision, I saw the two security guys sort of brace themselves to sort of take me down if I tried anything funny. Probably quite pleased that it was all over and that I'd got a compelling image. So looking at these pictures, I've got the pictures at the beginning which were frenzied and kind of documentary, and then the formal session started. And looking at the metadata, it says I started at 2:31 p.m. and then you go to the end of the set and the picture that we're talking about, a famous picture with her eyes shut, was taken at 2 minutes 43. So I had a total of 12 minutes.
It's not long.
No, it's not long, but sometimes you can get something great in 12 minutes. I really kind of scrutinise people's faces when I'm sort of making an edit. So there are actually 6 frames where she had her eyes closed, but they're basically all the same picture. Quite often the first picture and the last picture have the most sort of energy, but there's really nothing in it. So forget about the technical considerations and sort of just go for that emotional response. And you can see that that picture that I took has something. I think there's a tension there, something around the eyes, and also a sort of vulnerability. In terms of editing, I try and get it in the camera, so I don't tend to need to do a lot of work on images. I'll sort of make sure the colours look correct. I'll pay attention to contrast, make sure the information is there in the highlights and the shadows. You can see, if you look really close, these marks here are dirt on the sensor that's easily sort of retouched with the clone tool. But you keep it very, very simple. I'm not really of a mind to, you know, make her wrinkle-free or anything like that. Deconstructing it's really, really simple. It's a lesson I learned very, very early on, which is symmetry. We're attracted to people whose faces are very symmetrical. But the fact that it's that simple is sort of counterbalanced by who it is and the fact that she's got her eyes closed and you're not expecting that. What I like about it is the sort of ambiguity. What's going on in there? What's she thinking? This kind of uber powerful woman, you know, and now she's vulnerable and you're able to sort of gaze on her and reflect without having to deal with those piercing blue eyes coming back at you. I think it does help us empathise with her sort of predicament. I mean, she's somebody's mum, you know, even those amongst us who are truly kind of extraordinary figures, you know, succumb to human frailty. I think it was a picture that came along during a time when I was kind of trying to look at my work in a different way. I wanted to sort of do work that was more than just superficially interesting, you know, that kind of had that veneer of celebrity, but ultimately didn't have that much depth. And so with that in mind, I sort of started working on photographing portraits of Holocaust survivors. I just thought, you know, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? I'm very good at what I do, so let's apply this skill to a more interesting end. You know, I've got 25,000 rolls of film here. If my house was burning down and I had to sort of rescue the pictures that were most meaningful to me, they wouldn't be the Spice Girls or Baroness Thatcher. Sorry, Spice Girls. They'd be the pictures of my children, you know.
My name is Julia Fullerton-Batten and I am a fine art photographer. I would say that my work is very cinematic, it's quite staged. Often I say that the style of photography is nearly like a split second of a film. I often feel more like I'm a director rather than a photographer because I rely very much on a big crew of people around me, like photographic assistants, hair and makeup team, prop stylists, sometimes set designer. I would say there's always a kind of hyper-realism, there's a tension to the images when they are more constructed and more staged. I try and stick as close as possible to real stories. For example, I did a project on the Old Father Thames, and one of them was about people used to sunbathe right in front of the Tower Bridge. And there is a sandy beach that was actually imported, especially so that people could sunbathe there. I thought I'd like to recreate it, but I didn't get permission to actually have 60 people on the foreshore in their kind of vintage clothing to recreate the scene. So I photographed the background first. Once I had the background shot, I had to then recreate the scene with a huge sandpit that I created in a studio and photograph the people individually or in little groups, looking like they're actually sunbathing or eating ice cream or doing certain activities, and then placed in front of this beautiful backdrop in post-production. Bringing all these different elements together can be very, very time-consuming, but the whole build-up to the image and creating the image itself is I find it very exciting, and it's just the way my mind works. I just love the control over creating a scene that I have in my own mind rather than stumbling across something. My favorite shot is Penelope lockdown day 51. When we heard about COVID and the whole world was shutting down around us, I felt as a photographer I had to do something. I had to record this really surreal time in our lives. And as I was walking in my 1 hour permitted walks in my local neighborhood, I would notice people looking forlornly out of their windows as if they were kind of caged. I thought, how can I capture this, especially now that I've lost my crew of assistants who I rely on to set up lighting and props and everything. I put an ad out in my local area, and many people came forward from my local neighborhood. To create this kind of feel and this kind of look with my style of photography, it helped shoot at twilight, so when it was just getting dark. So then the inside lights would take over and spill out onto the streets or onto the pavement or onto the garden, and it would also illuminate the people inside. That certainly gave a certain look, but then I had to enhance it with my kind of more theatrical lighting to make them stand out more. People were stuck at home, they were furloughed, I think bored, probably scared as well. We were all suddenly behind walls, and I felt that we were kind of caged like in a zoo. Penelope!
Hi, Julia. Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm really well, and you?
Nice to see you.
Am I allowed in now?
You absolutely are. All safe and sound.
Penelope actually contacted me and said, I've got a houseboat, would you like to photograph me? And I just thought she'd be perfect. The shoot itself was a little bit complicated. Because of COVID, I couldn't actually go into her home, her houseboat at all, and rearrange a few things. So there was a lot more directing that was going on.
It almost seems like a
changed.
distant dream, but then it doesn't.
Or nightmare?
Or nightmare, yeah.
I was on one boat and she was on the other boat. Both boats were moving the whole time. And therefore, I couldn't just, I'm so used to putting my camera on a tripod, locking it off, and then creating the scene in front of me. But with this particular scene, I had to actually hang over the side of the boat and handhold the camera, which is not the way I normally work at all.
It took quite a bit of organising.
Yeah.
It's sort of just, but you knew what you wanted, and
Yes.
you knew what to sort of help with the clothes and what would look right. And then you said, no, leave it all a mess, which
Yeah.
it is in the final
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah. I asked most people not to actually clean their windows.
Yes, you sort of said leave
Yeah,
it. It's
leave
always
it. It's the imperfections that helps that kind of painterly feel. And we were shooting, I think I was shooting for about a good 4 hours. I was here, I think.
It's quite a long time. It was a
Yeah.
lot of floating, a lot of
Yes,
shots.
yeah. A lot of shouting.
It was
Yeah.
amazing. It gave me a really good memory of something in a really challenging, let's call it horrific time for us. To do something that's creative and beautiful was very much a joy.
I find the editing part very, very difficult sometimes. I tend to shoot quite a lot of variations, and sometimes they can just be very small gestures, but make such a difference, because her body posture didn't really change that much. It's all about the expression and the aura about her. Here I was finding that we were just losing her face too much. I mean, this was one of my top selects. The way the light's catching on the right-hand side and highlighting her face is really beautiful, making her stand out against the background. I felt Penelope's expression was spot on here, her posture and the overall look and feel. Often when photographing people and they don't have a very strong, powerful expression, the viewer can very much reflect our own feelings and reflect that back onto the image. So I would work together very closely with Nick, really fine-tuning those subtle differences where the eye is drawn to Penelope and not moving around the whole image. At the same time, it's really important to me that we can see the detail in the darkness, we can see the detail in the water, the time of day, that it's a moody sky and there's an atmosphere to it.
The exterior is primarily cooler colours. We're harmonising greens and blues. It's all about little percentages of these things that are actually within the image already, but then you fine-tune those. Within the interior, we're going a lot warmer, a lot more colourful, almost optimistic with that palette, and how they work together, warm and cool, is kind of quite a classic thing, but it's also very natural. You'll see it in nature all the time. Then we move into a little bit of grain work, just softening off any harsh, extreme noise that may have occurred through the night shoot. the eye, highlight detail, all the small subtle changes that we're doing, it's all very much operating on a subliminal level. When someone views this image for the first time, that impact, I'd hope, stays with them and they walk away thinking about it and remembering it and, you know, wanting to look at it again.
Colour is really important to me. So when I found this location, I very carefully and purposefully found elements that she could wear that reflects back on other things that are happening within the image. For example, the bathing cap is similar material to the plastic that's covering the boat, and the similar blue colour. And you know, your eye goes around the blue tones of these three as a triangle. Compositionally, I wanted her to be not too big and not too small in the frame, to have this kind of empty void, this kind of empty space around her that she can't really reach because she is in lockdown. And it is that kind of lockdown state that we were all in. All the other buildings are closed and locked and haven't been used for a long time. And she's just looking out, like, what does the future hold? I feel that the whole world was going through the same experiences. It was happening everywhere, and everybody can relate to the images. And therefore, I feel that people want to hold on to these images and look at them and reflect back on the time that we all went through. I'm hoping in years to come, we will talk about this very odd experience that happened to all of us, and we will hopefully have forgotten about it, but we'll reflect back on the images and think, gosh, that was a very odd, surreal time, wasn't it?